Hey guys, James Hunt from Airbnbguide.com, and this morning I received a great question from one of our followers named Robert. He sent me an email and said, James, I have a property. What are the benefits of putting it on Airbnb versus a traditional long-term rental? And I think that's a great question because if you do have a property that you're looking to make money off of as a rental, generally you would go the traditional route, which is to lock a tenant into a 6-month to a 1-year lease. That's just the way that things have been done, with rentals for a long time. However, if you've been hearing about short-term rentals and you're interested in testing out Airbnb or other short-term rental platforms, you should know the pros and cons of using Airbnb versus a traditional rental. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of using Airbnb versus a traditional long-term rental. First benefit of using Airbnb versus a traditional long-term rental is that you're going to have an increased nightly rental rate. Now with Airbnb, you can actually make double or triple the amount that you would with a traditional rental. Now this is because you're renting it for shorter periods of time. Generally when you sell something or rent something to someone over a long period of time, you decrease the payments in order to make it a better deal. Now, when you're looking at using Airbnb to rent your property, you have to compare it to hotels and the price of hotels versus traditional rental prices. Just as an example, my next door neighbor Lee was renting his spare bedroom out as a long-term rental, and he was charging about $400 a month. Now that he's using Airbnb, his goal is about $900 a month. So he has more than doubled the amount of money that he was using Airbnb versus his traditional long-term rental. Another benefit of using Airbnb as a rental platform versus traditional long-term rentals is that you can also make money off of a cleaning fee. Now this is going to be a flat rate that you charge per guest. You can set it to whatever you want to, but that's what you're going to charge guests to clean the rental. If you rent your house out 60 times in 1 year with a $25 cleaning fee, you just made $1,500 more dollars. So obviously you do have to actually clean the place and justify your cleaning fee. However, most people on Airbnb are used to charging or paying a cleaning fee, so you can make extra money off that as well. Another really positive thing about using Airbnb for short-term rentals versus a traditional long-term rental is that you can use Airbnb's review system to kind of vet your guest beforehand and see what kind of a renter they're going to be. Now with a long-term rental, a lot of times you will try to get references and you might run a background check or a credit check on a guest. However, that doesn't mean that your guest is going to be very clean, and it doesn't mean that they're going to treat your rental with respect. So on Airbnb, you can read through your guest reviews and see, hey, this guy has 5 stars for cleaning. He's a 5-star guest, so I can pretty much guarantee he's going to take care of my property. Now you can run into nightmare stories or bad guests. I mean, we've read about them, we've heard videos and people talk about, running into a bad guest. I haven't really had any myself. However, there are some out there. With that being said, if a guest has 10 5-star reviews for cleanliness, you can pretty much guarantee, hey, this is going to be a clean guy or girl, and we can trust that our rental property is going to be in good hands. The second part of the Airbnb review system, and a reason that makes it so great, is that guests will oftentimes want to treat your property with respect and keep it clean because of the fact that they know they're going to be reviewed when they leave your property. Most people that use Airbnb want to continue to use Airbnb, therefore they're going to try their best to be clean and treat your environment with respect so that they don't get a bad review. They want to get a good review so that they can keep using the app. And because of that, you can generally expect that your Airbnb guests are going to treat your property fairly and keep it clean. Another great thing about using Airbnb versus a short-term rental is the fact that your guests pay the full amount in advance. Now there are some instances where the guest will pay basically a month at a time. So if they rent your property for several months, they will just pay you for that month in advance. However, most of the time, guests only come for 3 days to maybe a week, and the entire amount that they're going to pay you gets put into your bank account the day after they check in. Now, their funds are actually held the moment that they book your property. Airbnb goes ahead and charges their credit card and puts a hold on that amount, and then after they check in, the funds go to your bank account. So one of the problems with a lot of traditional long-term rentals is that you're chasing your tenants trying to get money every month. With Airbnb, you don't really run into that problem because the funds get pulled from their account the moment that they book your property, so you don't really have to worry about that. Something that's also good to think about and to keep in the back of your mind is that as a host on Airbnb, you have a $1 million insurance policy that comes with your hosting account. It doesn't cover things like theft. However, if a guest does destroy your apartment or house, you can pretty much guarantee that Airbnb will cover the cost of damages. So yeah, with the long-term renter or with the long-term rental, you would have probably a commercial insurance policy that would cover stuff like that. However, with Airbnb, you kind of have the same thing as well, which is nice. With Airbnb, there is less consistency. When you sign a tenant into a long-term lease, that's generally going to be 6 months to a year. So for that 6 months to a year, you can count on a certain amount of income coming into your bank account every month. Once again, like I said, sometimes as a landlord, you do run into issues of guests not wanting to pay their rent. But for the most part, for that 6 months to a year, you can guarantee that income. With Airbnb, there is no guarantee that you're going to have renters. Maybe you have a calendar that's booked full this month, but then next month is a slow season, which means that the double amount that you made on your nightly rate is really cut in half because you had an empty calendar the next month. If you're really smart about your Airbnb and you've done the research, you can pretty much be consistent with your calendar. In St. Petersburg, where I'm at, our calendar stays pretty consistent and we stay booked out. I think we have a very competitive nightly rate and we offer a very clean and comfortable environment for our guests. So we have put a lot of research into it and we do a good job. And I think that as an Airbnb host, although your potential earnings are less consistent than with a traditional long-term rental, if you are smart about it, you can ensure some consistency. The second downside to using Airbnb versus a traditional long-term rental is that it does take work to get the property ready in between guests. Because there is a higher turnover rate, you're going to be constantly cleaning a property and managing a property and providing your guests with their required amenities and necessities. With a long-term renter, you just sign the lease, they go into the property, and very rarely do you actually have to interact with your tenants. Sure, you have basic maintenance that might have to be done on the house, like mowing the lawn and taking care of the property. However, for the most part, once the tenant gets into the property, they just do their own thing. With Airbnb, you're going to be interacting with guests on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, which is going to require you putting in a little bit of extra effort, or quite a bit extra effort, just to be honest, in order to maintain your business. Once again though, if you're making double or potentially triple the amount you would, it is worth the effort. And you can charge, like I said, a cleaning fee to help cover any expenses that would come from having a lawn crew or a cleaning crew or something like that. And lastly, I think one of the biggest downsides to using Airbnb versus a traditional long-term rental is that with most traditional rentals, you rent the place unfurnished. With Airbnb, it has to be move-in ready. The guest just comes, they stay there, and then they leave. Meaning you have to fully furnish your apartment, your house, your spare bedroom, or whatever it is that you're renting. Most people who just rent out their spare bedroom don't really have to worry about that because they probably have a bed in there anyways. However, in my case, it's just Rebecca and I in the house. Therefore, we really didn't need that extra bedroom. So for the several $1,000s that we spent to furnish that extra bedroom, that really is an added expense. However, we did make that back in the first several months of using Airbnb. So from here on out, we have our fully furnished extra bedroom and bathroom that we can use at any time, and we do make money off of it. So there you go, guys. Those aren't all the pros and cons of using Airbnb versus a traditional long-term rental, but I do think it does cover quite a few of the pros and cons that you're going to run into, and stuff that you should think about if you're trying to decide whether or not you should use Airbnb versus a traditional long-term rental. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me a message through YouTube. And as always, you can go to airbnbguide.com to learn more hosting tips and tricks from super hosts like myself.